Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed ways to counter Iranian threats in his meeting with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
Right, and this was during his visit to Tel Aviv. Netanyahu's office said that the threat from Iran and the need for both countries to join forces against it were raised during the talks. The Israeli Prime Minister welcomed the United States' support in its fight against Iran-aligned armed groups in the region.
According to reports, Netanyahu also told the US Secretary of State that the assassination attempt against him cannot be ignored after his house in Caesarea was targeted by the Hezbollah drone last week. Now, Iran figured in Blinken's meeting with the Israeli defense minister as well. Yoav Gallant told the US diplomat that his government expects Washington's support when it attacks Iran in response to a missile strike. It wasn't a missile strike, there were somewhere close to 200 missiles which were launched towards Israel on the 1st of October. Gallant said the US stance with Israel following its attack on Iran will strengthen regional deterrence and weaken the Iranian axis.
Now, during his 11th trip to the region since the war between Israel and Hamas erupted last year, Blinken also held talks with Netanyahu on post-war Gaza governance.
The Israeli Prime Minister expressed hope that the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar will have a positive impact on the return of the hostages held in Gaza for more than a year. The situation in Gaza came up for discussion during Blinken's meeting with the Israeli president as well. The leader said Sinwar's death has created a new opportunity to end the conflict.
Following the killing of Sinwar and the other circumstances that have evolved, there is a unique opportunity to make a special effort to employ all tools necessary and possible to move forward and bring the hostages back home.
I believe very much that the death of Sinwar does create an important opportunity to bring the hostages home, to bring the war to an end, and to ensure Israel's security.
Meanwhile, massive protests erupted outside Blinken's hotel in Tel Aviv as families of US-Israeli hostages in Gaza voiced their anger over stalled negotiations for the release of the captives. The demonstrators chanted slogans and displayed signs demanding to secure a deal.
Now that Sinwar is gone, we are hoping that the pressure from the United States is going to be immense on the parties, whether it's Qatar, Egypt, Israel, and of course Hamas, to finalize the deal and bring them home.
We are, according to the United States, waiting on Hamas to figure out what and who are the decision makers. I would act decisively, actively, proactively to get a deal on the table for Hamas to consider and put an end to all of this, including the suffering of the people in Gaza.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Adrian Kalmal. He's a fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Mr. Kalmal, the question is a ceasefire anywhere on the table? Do you think it'll come anywhere in the near future? Or do you think this is just face-saving at this point for the United States, of course, as the elections are approaching as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think it's more of the latter. It's more face-saving. It's more of Blinken making another trip, his 11th trip, to try and make the point that we have some influence in this this protracted conflict, especially related to the hostages. And then I think we also need to take a step back with everybody talking about the death of Sinwar being an opening. We have to also remember that the Hamas has elected their whole new Politburo. They're sitting in Qatar. They're directing to Gaza. And ultimately, the decision may rest in Qatar, but ultimately the Islamic Republic. So we can continue to pressure Israel into making some type of deal, and proposals have been put on the table. Nothing post-Sinwar, so to speak. But I don't expect any movement, unfortunately.
Mr. Kalmel, as far as the hostilities between Israel and Iran are concerned, well, it's on the brink of only going further from here, because reports are suggesting that the IDF has completed preparations for a strike on Iran. US has doubled its interceptors for the THAAD systems, expecting an immediate response from the Iranian side. Iran-Israel, is the war certain now, or do you feel the two sides may just dull it down the way they did earlier in April in the year?
No, Shivan, great question. I don't expect it to dull down. Israel has to respond. They're going to respond, not just for the most recent rocket barrage that we saw was on October 1st, but you also have the attempt made on Netanyahu's life that was actually directed from Lebanon with
and you
IRGs.
mentioned that it can't be ignored. So that again is...
No, it can't be ignored.
Yes.
It can't be ignored. And this is the first time that a head of state has been attempted to be taken out. We have to remember, Nasrallah is not a head of state. Sinwar is not a head of state. Hania was not a head of state. So something is coming. The U.S., they lack credibility, this administration, when it comes to the Islamic Republic and working with them. We've lost collective deterrence. They talk about working together. It's been Israel doing all the heavy lifting here. And there's some really concerning reports coming out of the United States where if I was Israel, I would not trust the United States and make sure not to reveal too much of what they plan on doing. There's a leaked memo coming out of the DOD. They've allowed Tehran to fuel their proxies over the last 4 years through unsanctioned oil sales, and they're still pursuing a nuclear agreement. So Israel is, they're going to act in their own interests. The U.S. THAAD systems, I want to point that out, the THAAD systems are really there to protect U.S. interests that we have on the ground there. It's not so much to protect Israel. There's something coming. It's a question of, what's it going to hit? Is it going to be the petrochemical industry? Is it going to be military targets? Is it going to be the oil industry? Is it going to be certain infrastructure? Or the nuclear facilities? That's the big one that everybody's asking about. So something's...
Yeah, I just wanted to come in there. You mentioned something very interesting here, that US has positioned those THAAD systems there to protect its own interests and not Israeli interests. If you can elaborate further on that, because there were also reports that Israel was saying they didn't need US boots on Israeli soil. US has sent over 100 military boots there. They've sent their THAAD systems there. They've increased their interceptors there, and you're saying that they're protecting their own interests. What are these interests?
Well, if you look at where the THAAD is deployed, they're around in the Negev, for example. That's one area where they are deployed, and they're around where U.S. has certain. I can't go into too much detail, but they have certain interests, hardware interests, intelligence interests, that they don't want to be targeted inside. It's protecting our own interests within the country, within Israel.
Understood.
Mr. Kalmel, also, of course, Israel has confirmed the death of Hashim Safieddin. There are reports that Naim Qasim has fled to Iran as well. Now, these military factions, they have not named their next head. Why do you think that is?
It's because, great question, Hima. It's because they've been completely thinned out. When you look at their structure, Naim Qasim really is the last notable figure that I see sitting up there. Now, he's much older than Nasrallah and the people that have been removed, but that's been part of the Israeli strategy, was to go from the bottom up and remove that Hezbollah structure so that they can't replace these positions, as opposed to a decapitation strike where you go after Nasrallah first. There's always someone that's going to come up and fill. So I think it's because they have a manpower problem and a leadership problem right now.
Mr. Kalmel, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Always a good discussion when you're on the show. Adrian Kalmel, fellow at Arabian Peninsula Institute, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar, joining us on World DNA. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Have a great day.